today at the Holocaust Memorial. Now, if you don't know what Holocaust is, that's fine, because we're going to learn about it all together. Look at the screen. There are 14 items. I wonder how many you can remember. Take a good look. 14 things. And your job is to try and remember as many of them as possible. Take a second, have a look. Okay. Now I want you to pause your video and either write down or see how many of them you can remember. Remember, there's 14 altogether. How did you get on? I wonder if any of you could actually remember all 14. On the screen now, there's a set of keys. Keys are really important. If you forget your keys, it can be a bit of a disaster. You might find that you can't get in your car or you can't get into your house. It's important to remember your keys. And today, that's just what we're doing. We're remembering. These two people are saying, never forget. And they're asking us to never forget something that's happened to them. The man in the top left-hand side of your screen is quite old now, but when this thing happened, he was a little boy, and there's a picture of him as a little boy. And the lady, she's holding up a yellow star with the word Jude on it. So let's find out what they're asking us to never forget. Yes, they want us to never forget the Holocaust. So let me explain to you all about the Holocaust. In the 1930s and 1940s, in a country called Germany, a man called Adolf Hitler, there's a picture of him, started the Nazi Party. Now, Germany, where they lived, had had a bad time in their history, and they wanted to be great again. They wanted to renew their power and their authority. And Adolf Hitler came to power with the Nazis. Here's some of the soldiers. And there's their flag. It's called a swastika. The Nazis were like a big army, and they tried to invade all the other countries in Europe. Their flag, the swastika, started to go up everywhere. Now, the Nazis believed that there was a superior race called the Aryan race. The Aryan race would be white and perhaps have blue eyes and blonde hair. The Nazis started to teach people to hate and fear different racial groups. They particularly hated the Jews. Now, the Jews are a group of people whose story is told in the Old Testament part of the Bible. The Jewish people loved and followed God and had different ways of doing things. Their special holy day was a Saturday. Here's some signs that started to go up because the Nazis hated the Jews. Achtung Juden, that means beware of the Jews in German, went up as a sign. And look, there's a skull and crossbones underneath it. That's like something that's poisonous and dangerous. The Nazis were telling people that the Jews were dangerous. The bottom sign says in German, the Jews are not allowed in this area. And that started to happen as well. Pictures started to go up in the local newspapers. The one on the left of the screen is a Jewish man. You can tell because he's got a little skull cap on the top of his head. But even though there aren't any words, that cartoon tells us a lot. It's saying a Jewish person isn't to be trusted. I mean, he looks greedy and grasping. And that's what the Nazis were trying to make everybody believe about the Jews. The other side of the screen's got a newspaper. It says Juden raus, which means in German, get the Jews out. Now, that wasn't enough just to tell people to hate the Jews. Now, the Nazis said the Jews are dangerous, so we need to know who they all are. Sometimes somebody who was Jewish would look like everybody else. So now the Nazis made all the Jews wear a yellow star with the word Jude in it. That was the German word for Jew. Can you see the pictures? They're just children, but some of them have got the stars on and some of them haven't. The two little boys at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side, they're just babies. But the Nazis were teaching everybody to hate them because they were Jewish. Nazi law in Germany meant that Jewish people couldn't go to school anymore, couldn't marry people who weren't Jewish. They weren't allowed to vote, and they weren't allowed to do many jobs. The Nazis started making it very difficult for Jewish people. If, say, your dad was a doctor, suddenly he wasn't allowed to practice medicine. Perhaps your mum owned a shop. Now, nobody would shop in your shop. So suddenly, Jewish people were finding it very, very difficult to live. In your class, when everybody was allowed to go to school, perhaps suddenly all the children who are Jewish are wearing yellow stars and are made to sit in a different area of the class, and the teacher's not kind to them. Perhaps you're told by your mum and dad, you can't play with Jewish children. This man, Otto, when he was 10 years old, says, I was Jewish and I couldn't ride a bicycle or have a pet. I wasn't allowed to go in the local park because there's a sign up saying Jews are forbidden, and I wasn't allowed to kick a football about in the park. But things got worse. Do you know, children, when nobody speaks up and says, stop, this is wrong, things do get worse. They never get better. In 1940, it became law that all Jews were not allowed to own their own property and they were made to live in ghettos. A ghetto is a space in the town, an area just set apart for them. Let me have a look and see what it looks like. Yes, there we are. Beyond the wall would be a ghetto. So all the Jewish people were crammed into there. Some of the apartments and houses weren't very big. And, well, that meant several families had to live together. And German soldiers, Nazi soldiers, were left at the entrances. So the Jewish people had to show their papers going in and out. The bottom picture just shows a lot of Jewish people lined up against a wall and being searched. But things got worse. In 1942, the Nazis started to clear the ghettos. They arrested all the Jews and sent them on a train to a special prison called a concentration camp. Here's some pictures. The people didn't have very much time to pack. They just grabbed what they could, and the soldiers ordered them out of the ghettos and took them away. It was a very frightening time for everybody. The bottom picture, that's some people arriving at the concentration camp. They were made to wear kind of stripy clothes. And can you see they've all got a label on their lapel just here? That would have their name, number on it, because everybody had a number. More of that in a minute. Here's a picture of the train they were sent on. It wasn't a nice passenger train with seats and windows. It was used usually for animals, so all the people were crammed into carriages that were made for animals, and there were no toilets and no food. And the journey to the concentration camp took several days. There's some people arriving. That's a genuine photograph. The ones in the striped pyjamas are already prisoners being made to help. And then there's some soldiers. There's a lady right at the front with a baby. And can you see that man? Yeah, the one in front of the soldier with his back to us. He's got no trousers on and only one shoe. I wonder why that is. I think it's because he had to leave in such a hurry, they didn't even give him time to dress. Here's a picture of a famous concentration camp in Poland. It's called Auschwitz. The train would take people, Jewish people, right the way in. And I have to tell you, although this story I'm telling you now is about the Jewish people, a lot of other people were also considered less human by the Nazis. Disabled people were put in concentration camps, and travellers, sometimes called gypsies, were put in concentration camps. And the Nazis hated the Polish and Catholics, and some of them were put in concentration camps as well. So, what happened when you were put in a concentration camp? First of all, you were given a number and not a name. You weren't allowed to be a person anymore, you were just a number. Those people are quite old now, but when they were put in a concentration camp, they were only children. But the tattoo of the number stayed with them forever. They were lucky to survive. Lots didn't. Here's some children at the concentration camp fence, and here are some men. They didn't have much room to sleep, did they? And look how thin they are, and how cold they must have been. The men were separated from the women and children, and many never saw each other ever again. Many starved to death. But worse than this, the very worst thing happened. The Nazis decided that actually they didn't want the Jews to live at all. So they started to gather them up in the concentration camp and put them in gas chambers, just like the one that's right in the right-hand side of your screen at the bottom. They'd crowd them all in and put gas capsules down, and they'd all die. And they were doing it time and time again. The Nazis killed 6 million Jews. 6 million. Later, when soldiers who weren't Nazis from other countries went into Nazi Germany, into the concentration camps, they found piles of glasses and piles of cases and piles of shoes. All of these represented a person or lots of people who'd been murdered by the Nazis. Before we start part 2 of learning about the Holocaust, there's a quiz called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Let's see what you have learned about this and can remember so far.